Welcome to Starbound. My name is I Am Duck, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspy Academy and Freyrin and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. The Galactic Federation banned Earth's cuisine for being too dangerous. The recent law banning Earth's cuisine was a nightmare for Sozir. As the owner of the Everything Restaurant, a successful establishment on planet Career's only moon, he was devastated when he learned that Earth's food had been outlawed by the Federation. Now he stood in the Information Department of Interspecies Affairs, determined to uncover the reason behind the mysterious law that was ruining his business. The moment Sozir pushed through the heavy metallic doors, a wall of scent assaulted his short nose. It was the unmistakable smell of old papers, that peculiar combination of decomposing cellulose, ancient binding glues, and the faint metallic tang of oxidizing inks. His nostrils flared in succession, each one processing the overwhelming antiquity of the place. As Sozir took another step forward, his implant pinged with the recognition alert that made him stop dead in his tracks. Mounted on the far wall, like some shrine to technological regression, was a cathode ray tube screen. The implant helpfully provided specifications: vacuum-sealed glass envelope, electron gun assembly, phosphorescent coating, magnetic deflection system. His mind reeled, trying to process why such an artifact would be here, in the administrative heart of an interstellar government that routinely bent space for faster-than-light communication. The sheer absurdity of it made him cross his forearms in frustration, his smooth blue-green scales tensing at once, even his two vestigial limbs, those shorter appendages protruding from his lower torso that had made him such a sensation in the kitchen, able to season 4 dishes simultaneously while plating 2 others, joined in the gesture of disbelief. Those same limbs that had helped him rise from a line cook to the owner of the most successful multi-species restaurant on Career's moon, now contaminated by agitation. How could the same civilization that had mastered quantum entanglement, communication, still maintain an office that looked like it had been preserved in temporal amber? Sozir's 2 blue eyes swiveled independently as he approached the reception desk. The desk itself was another anachronism, carved from what appeared to be actual wood, though from what planet's trees he couldn't begin to guess. Behind it, the true scope of the Information Department's commitment to antiquated methods revealed itself. Shelves upon shelves stretched back into the gloom, each one packed with documents, not data crystals, not hollow storage units, not even the outdated magnetic matrices that some frontier worlds still used. Actual, physical documents were everywhere. Sozir was beginning to wonder if he should simply leave and try to file his complaint through more conventional channels when a blur of motion in his peripheral vision made him turn. Something purple and fast zipped between the shelves, disturbing papers in its wake. He tracked it with his eyes. The blur resolved itself into a small vehicle, no larger than a dinner plate, hovering on what looked like badly maintained anti-grav units that sparked and sputtered with each change in direction. Perched atop this precarious conveyance was the smallest sentient being Sozir had ever encountered. No more than 2 feet tall, the creature looked like someone had taken the concept of a gremlin from Earth mythology and dipped it in purple dye. Its eyes, large and deep, gleamed with the same purple hue as its wrinkled skin. Thin arms ending in 3-fingered hands gripped the controls of its floating vehicle with surprising dexterity. while its legs, shorter than Sozia's vestigial limbs, dangled over the edge. The creature seemed entirely absorbed in its work, zipping from shelf without paying attention to anything else. Sozia cleared his throat, producing a polite attention-seeking rumble. The sound echoed in the vast space, and the little alien's vehicle jerked to a stop, so suddenly that several papers from its pile went floating to the floor like autumn leaves. Sozia tried again, modulating his voice to what he hoped was a non-threatening register. "Excuse me?" The purple creature's head swiveled almost completely around, those big eyes focusing on Sozia with an intensity that was slightly unnerving. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the 6-foot-tall restaurateur with his 6 arms crossed in frustration, and the diminutive archivist hovering on his sputtering mechanical carpet. "You're not supposed to be back here," the creature said in a voice like grinding gears. "Reception is at the front desk." "I've been standing at the front desk for the past 10 minutes, Sozia replied, trying to keep the irritation out of his voice. "There's no one there." "Of course there isn't. Bzk Glick retired 2 cycles ago. Budget constraints." The creature's vehicle dipped alarmingly as it shrugged. "I am the Tridarian responsible for this department. What do you want?" Sozia noticed the creature hadn't offered its name, just its species. Typical bureaucrat. "My name is Sozia. I own the Everything restaurant in Korea's Moon. I'm here to request information about why human food has been banned across the Federation. This law is destroying my business. I had 10 different Earth cuisines on my menu, and now..." "Ah." The Tridarian's large eyes seemed to widen. "We have prepared for this scenario where we would have to explain why the law was created. Standard Protocol 774B, subsection 12. Sozia felt his scales ripple with confusion. "You've prepared? Then can you explain it to me?" "Of course we've prepared. Do you think we're incompetent?" The Tridarian's vehicle rose slightly, bringing it to eye level. "The Federation Council knew there would be inquiries. We have comprehensive documentation detailing the necessity of the ban." "Then tell me." Sozia's vestigial arms made a small gesture of confusion. "Tell you?" The Tridarian's facial features rearranged themselves in what might have been shock. "Verbally. Do you have any idea how long that would take? The full explanation is long, with subsections on biological incompatibilities, chemical reactions, psychological dependencies, and socio-economic disruptions. The verbal presentation alone would take days, not counting the mandatory rest periods for vocal cord recovery." "I don't need the full..." "Of course you need the full explanation!" The Tridarian's vehicle spun in a complete circle, expressing indignation through motion. "How else would you understand the complete scope of the threat? No. We do things properly here. By the book, by the archive, by the protocol." Sozia watched in growing bewilderment as the Tridarian zoomed off into the shelves, muttering to itself in what sounded like at least 3 different languages. The little alien's vehicle wove between the stacks, occasionally stopping so its pilot could examine a shelf label or reference number. 774B. No, that's 774A. Where did... wrong century. The Tridarian's voice echoed from somewhere in the depths of the archive. "Who filed this under culinary catastrophes? It clearly belongs in interspecies dietary disasters. I swear the filing system has been deteriorating ever since they let that Vorthin intern reorganize Section 12. More crashes, more muttering. Sozia found himself checking his internal chronometer, wondering if he should simply leave and try to salvage his restaurant through other means. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Tridarian emerged from the depths of the archive. Its tiny, hovering vehicle now struggled under the weight of its cargo, a magnetic tape reel that was literally larger than the alien carrying it. "Here," the Tridarian announced triumphantly, bringing the oversized reel to rest on the reception desk, with a thud that sent vibrations through the ancient wood. "Educational material reference number 774B1. The Coffee Incident, a cautionary tale of Earth's culinary dangers. Federation approved, of course." Sozia stared at the reel. His neural implant was having what could only be described as a digital panic attack, flooding his consciousness with incredulous alerts, magnetic tape storage, linear access methodology, physical degradation factors, probable data corruption after extended storage. The technology was so obsolete that his implant had to access historical databases just to understand how to interface with it. "You want me to watch this?" Sozia picked up the reel with two of his primary arms, turning it over as if it might reveal some hidden modern technology. "Insert it into the playback device below the viewing screen," the Tridarian instructed, pointing one tiny finger at the cathode ray tube. "The instructions are clearly labeled. Even a... what are you, Calixian?" "Vrybian," Sozia corrected absently, still staring at the reel. "Even a Vrybian should be able to operate it. The system is quite user-friendly. We updated it just last millennium." Sozia's eyes found the playback device the Tridarian had indicated. It was a massive construction of metal and what looked like actual mechanical parts, with a slot clearly designed to accept the reel. For a moment, Sozia genuinely doubted reality. Perhaps he was still in his restaurant, passed out from overwork, dreaming this entire bizarre scenario. The Galactic Federation, with all its technological might, all its advanced civilization, couldn't possibly conduct official business using technology that predated faster-than-light travel. Could it? But the weight of the reel in his hands was undeniably real. "Well?" the Tridarian prompted. "The playback station is equipped with standard seating for most bipedal and quadrupedal species. You'll find the controls quite intuitive once you begin." Sozia looked at the reel, then at the playback device, then at the Tridarian. His mind cycled through disbelief, frustration, and a growing sense that perhaps, just perhaps, if the Federation had banned Earth food and was forcing him to watch ancient magnetic tapes to understand why, there might be more to this situation than simple bureaucratic overreach. With all six arms working in concert, Sozia began to load the tape into the machine. The mechanical parts clicked in ways that seemed almost aggressive. But as the tape began to feed through the system and the cathode ray tube turned on, he realized he was about to get his answers, even if they came in the most absurdly obsolete format possible. The chair in front of the viewing station was, as the Tridarian had promised, designed to accommodate multiple species. Sozia settled his elongated form onto the cushioned surface, his tail finding the groove clearly meant for tailed beings, while his primary arms rested on supports that could be adjusted for beings with anywhere from 2 to 8 major limbs. Soon static resolved into the familiar insignia of the Galactic Federation, rendered in what his implant informed him was standard definition. "The Coffee Incident, a cautionary tale of Earth's culinary dangers," a narrator's voice intoned. "A Federation educational document. Viewer discretion advised for species with caffeine sensitivities or traumatic associations with stimulant addiction." The screen faded to black, then opened on a scene that made Sozia lean forward despite himself. It was Krogar Prime, home of the Krogar species. He recognized the distinctive yellow trees with homes around the tree trunks. The Krogar themselves filled the screen, their magnificent forms captured in what the documentary claimed was actual footage from the period in question. They were breathtaking creatures, the Krogar. 2 wings of colorful membrane stretched between hollow bones that seemed too delicate to support flight, yet somehow generated enough lift to carry their meter-long bodies through the air with grace that put manufactured anti-grav units to shame. The Krogar civilization had achieved faster-than-light travel 3 centuries before first contact with humanity, the narrator explained as the scene showed Krogar working in harmony. Their society, built on principles of aerial transport, had created one of the most stable civilizations in the galactic center. Crime was virtually unknown, as their mating-for-life biological imperative created powerful social bonds. Their single mating season, occurring once per solar year, was a celebrated event that reinforced social cohesion. The documentary showed footage of a Krogar mating season, thousands of the creatures performing elaborate aerial dances, their wing patterns creating living kaleidoscopes in the sky. Then, the narrator's tone shifted, becoming grave. Humanity made first contact. The screen showed archival footage of the first human trade delegation to Krogar Prime. Sozia watched the humans, bipedal, relatively hairless, with their strange single-paired limbs, offering various trade goods. Among the many goods humanity offered for trade, the narrator continued, was a beverage they called coffee, derived from roasted beans of the coffea plant. Humans had consumed this mild stimulant for thousands of years without significant ill effects beyond minor dependency issues. The footage showed a Krogar accepting a cup of the dark liquid, its head tilting in the characteristic gesture of their species. The creature took a sip, paused, then took another. Its wing feathers rustled, a sign of pleasure among their kind. The Krogar delegation's positive response to coffee led to immediate trade negotiations. Within one standard month, coffee import stations were established on 7 of Krogar Prime's 12 continents. The documentary's tone grew increasingly ominous as it showed the rapid proliferation of coffee throughout Krogar society. What began as a curiosity quickly became a phenomenon. Coffee houses opened in the spiral cities. Krogar discovered they could fly longer, work more hours, and needed less sleep when consuming the human beverage. The documentary showed productivity charts soaring upward, economic indicators all positive. For 6 human months, the introduction of coffee seemed an unqualified success, the narrator said. The Krogar reported increased satisfaction in all sectors of life. Coffee became integrated into social rituals, business meetings, and even religious ceremonies. The stimulant effect, mild in humans, created a euphoric energy boost in Krogar physiology that seemed to enhance every aspect of their existence. The music turned ominous. The screen darkened. Then came the first reports of irregularities. The documentary showed what appeared to be security footage from a Krogar medical facility. A bonded pair of Krogar sat before a medical professional, their wing positions indicating distress. Through subtitles, Sozia read their concern. They had begun exhibiting mating behaviors 3 months before the scheduled season. Initial reports were dismissed as anomalies, the narrator continued. But within weeks, medical facilities across Krogar Prime were inundated with similar cases. Bonded pairs were experiencing unprecedented off-season mating urges. Their carefully regulated biological cycles were being disrupted by the caffeine in their systems. The screen filled with charts and graphs showing the exponential increase in off-season mating behaviors. What started as dozens of cases became hundreds, then thousands. The documentary showed increasingly frantic government meetings, Krogar officials flutter pacing in their council chambers as they tried to understand what was happening to their species. By the 8th month of coffee consumption, the situation had reached crisis proportions. 73% of adult Krogar were exhibiting off-season mating behaviors. But this was only the beginning of the cascade failure in their society. What followed was a litany of social collapse that made Sozia's secondary stomach clench in sympathy. The documentary methodically catalogued each stage of their disaster. First, the off-season mating led to off-season egg-laying, something Krogar biology was not designed to support. The females, already stressed from the biological irregularity, found themselves depleted of crucial nutrients needed for healthy eggs. Fertility rates were higher than ever. Then came the social ramifications. Krogar who had been mated for life began experiencing attraction to others, a biological impossibility under normal circumstances. Their entire social structure, built on the absolute certainty of life bonds, began to fracture. Divorce, a concept that hadn't existed in their language, had to hastily be invented to deal with the separations. The documentary's being quite clinical about this, Sozia muttered to himself, watching the charts and graphs. But behind the statistics he could see the real tragedy. Millennia of stable civilization crumbling because of a beverage that humans considered as harmless as water. The worst was yet to come. The documentary showed footage from what it termed the Year of Endless Spring, a 12-month period where the Krogar experienced continuous mating behaviors. The normal single season expanded to fill the entire year, driven by the constant caffeine consumption that their bodies couldn't properly metabolize. The biological imperative to mate overrode all other concerns. The narrator explained over footage of empty factories, abandoned schools, and neglected infrastructure. Krogar society effectively ceased to function, as every adult member became consumed with mating behaviors. The elderly and the young were left to fend for themselves, as the breeding age population descended into what xenobiologists would later term caffeine-induced chaos. The screen showed the aftermath. Nurseries overflowing with eggs, far more than the Krogar could properly tend. The normal clutch size of 2 to 3 eggs per pair had exploded to dozens. The females' bodies responding to the artificial stimulation by overproducing. When the eggs began to hatch, the narrator continued, Krogar society faced its greatest crisis. The population of hatchlings increased by 1,300% in a single season. The adults, finally beginning to recover from their caffeine-induced mating marathon, as coffee supplies were desperately restricted, found themselves overwhelmed. The footage that followed was heartbreaking. Krogar hatchlings requiring constant care and feeding for their first year of their life filled every available space. The traditional communal aeries, designed to handle the offspring of careful once-yearly mating seasons, couldn't begin to accommodate the numbers. Makeshift nurseries were established in every available building. Adult Krogar, exhausted from a year of continuous mating, struggled to provide care. The Galactic Federation responded to Krogar Prime's desperate plea for assistance. The documentary continued, showing Federation ships arriving with supplies and personnel. Emergency aid programs were established. Child care specialists from 8 different avian species were brought in to assist with the hatchling crisis. Food synthesizers worked continuously to provide nutrition for the unexpected population boom. The documentary detailed the years of recovery that followed. Slowly, painfully, Krogar society rebuilt itself. Coffee was banned entirely from their world, but the damage lingered. An entire generation grew up knowing their parents had been victims of the coffee incident. The traditional mating seasons took years to fully re-establish, with many Krogar requiring medical intervention to restore their natural cycles. The Galactic Federation attempted to seek compensation from humanity for the disaster, the narrator stated over footage of legal proceedings. The humans, however, argued that they could not have foreseen the interaction between caffeine and Krogar biology. They pointed out, correctly, that coffee had been consumed safely by their species and many others without incident. The legal proceedings continued for 7 years. The screen showed human diplomats looking genuinely distressed as they testified about their lack of knowledge regarding Krogar biochemistry, and even apologizing. Counter-arguments from Krogar representatives, translated into multiple languages, spoke of destroyed lives, broken bonds, and a generation of traumatized hatchlings. In the end, the narrator concluded, the only resolution was a promise from humanity that coffee would never again be sold to avian species without extensive biochemical testing. A promise that humanity kept even at the cost of monetary losses. The Krogar eventually recovered, though their society bears scars from the incident to this day. Population imbalances persist. Trust in off-world trade has never fully recovered, and coffee, once considered a miraculous enhancer of life, is now classified as a controlled substance on Krogar Prime, possession punishable by exile. The documentary ended with a slow zoom on a memorial erected on Krogar Prime, a monument of 1 billion eggs stacked atop one another in a chaotic manner. The screen faded to black, leaving Sozir staring at his own reflection in the darkened cathode ray tube. Behind him, the Tridarian's vehicle sputtered back into his line of sight. The little alien had apparently been filing documents during the screening, but now hovered expectantly near Sozir's shoulder. "Well?" the Tridarian asked, its compound eyes reflecting the dim light of the archive. "Do you begin to understand why human food has been banned?" Sozir rose from the chair, his full height towering over the floating bureaucrat. His scales rippled with agitation. "One incident," he said, his primary arms gesturing empathetically while he crossed his vestigial limbs in frustration. "One incident with one species, and one beverage. That doesn't justify banning all human food across the entire Federation." "One incident?" The Tridarian's vehicle rose higher, bringing it to Sozir's eye level. "One incident? Do you have any idea of the scope of the damage? An entire civilization brought to its knees, generations affected, billions of credits in aid and reconstruction." "But surely that's an extreme case," Sozir argued, pacing now, his tail leaving marks in the dust of the archive floor. "Coffee and the Krogar, that's a specific biological incompatibility. It doesn't mean all human food is dangerous to all species. My restaurant has served human cuisine to many different species for 8 years without a single incident." "Without a single incident that you know of," the Tridarian corrected, wagging one tiny finger. "Do you monitor your customers after they leave? Do you track long-term health effects? Do you have any idea what human chocolate does to Zenthrin digestive systems over time? What about the cumulative effects of capsaicin on species with white blood?" "That's why we have warning labels," Sozir's voice rose, echoing in the vast space. "That's why we have ingredient lists and dietary advisories. You don't ban an entire planet's cuisine because of isolated incompatibilities." By that logic, we should ban Regalian spotted mushrooms because they're toxic to carbon-based life forms. The Tridarian's vehicle performed what could only be described as an aerial scoff, dipping and rising in indignation. Isolated incompatibilities? Isolated? Oh, you poor naive restaurateur. You think coffee was the only incident? The alien's purple skin seemed to darken with emotion. That was just the first. The one that opened our eyes to the danger humanity's cuisine represents. Then show me, Sozia challenged, all 6 arms spread wide. Show me these other incidents that justify destroying my livelihood, ruining businesses across the Federation, depriving billions of beings of culinary experiences they've come to love. The Tridarian's compound eyes glittered. Without a word, it spun its vehicle around and zoomed back into the depths of the archive. Sozia could hear it muttering as it went, something about stubborn merchants, and profit over safety, and why do I even bother maintaining these records if no one believes them? More crashes echoed from the stacks, more creative cursing in languages Sozia's translator couldn't quite parse. The cheese incident, the Tridarian announced, returning with another massive reel balanced precariously on its tiny vehicle. This one was even larger than the first, and the anti-grav units were now producing a concerning amount of smoke. Since you refuse to see reason, since you insist on evidence, watch this and tell me human food isn't a threat to galactic stability. The reel thudded onto the desk with enough force to send vibrations through the floor. Sozia picked it up, noting that this one felt heavier, denser somehow. He looked at the label. The Great Cheese Incident. How humanity's perversion of the sacred milk fractured the mammalian alliance. With quickly movements now, Sozia loaded the second reel into the machine. The old technology protested with new and interesting sounds, but eventually the tape began to feed through the system. The cathode ray tube turned on as Sozia settled into the chair once more. The documentary opened with sweeping shots of various mammalian species across the galaxy. The majestic Bonians with their 6 udders, the ethereal Fractari, whose translucent bodies showed milk flowing through specialized organs, the proud feline faction, whose entire culture revolved around the nursing of their young, a reverent chorus playing as the narrator began. Since the dawn of mammalian consciousness across the galaxy, milk has been revered as the liquid of life itself, the first nourishment, the sacred bond between parent and offspring, the white essence that sustains civilization itself. The narrator's tone was almost religious in its fervor. For thousands of years, the mammalian alliance has stood united in this fundamental truth. Milk is sacred, pure, and inviolate. The screen showed footage of the great milk temples on the Fractari homeworld, where fountains of various species milk flowed into artistic painting. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to visit, to remember the first feeding, to celebrate the purity of mammalian connection. Then the music turned dark. Humanity revealed their darkest culinary secret. The screen showed a human cheese-making facility. To Sozia, it looked like any food production plant, but the documentary framed it as if revealing a horror. The narrator's voice dripped with disgust. Humans use milk, their sacred fluid, and deliberately contaminate it with bacteria. They let it rot. They encourage decay. They transform the liquid of life into cheese. The narrator finally spat the word out like a curse. The reaction shots from various mammalian species were dramatic. A Vractari diplomats protesting in horror. A mammalian mother clutched her nursing young as if to protect them from the very knowledge of such blasphemy. When the Mammalian Alliance discovered the practice, the narrator continued, the philosophical and religious implications shattered 11 separate peace treaties. The idea that a mammalian species could so defile the sacred essence led to immediate ostracization of humanity from all mammalian cultural exchanges. The documentary showed protest footage, millions of mammalians marching, holding signs condemning the cheese heresy. Diplomatic summits collapsed as representatives refused to sit at the same table as humans. Trade agreements worth trillions of credits dissolved overnight. The instability spread beyond mere philosophical differences, the narrator explained. 3 border conflicts erupted as mammalian species demanded buffer zones between their territories and any human settlements. The cheese wars was only avoided after countless hours of mediation by the Federation's diplomatic team. So Zia watched the screen fade to black, his mind reeling. When he turned around, the Tridarian was hovering expectantly. That's ridiculous, Sozia exploded, rising from the chair. They didn't ban human food because cheese is dangerous. They banned it because some species got philosophically offended. That's not a safety issue. That's a cultural misunderstanding. The Tridarian's purple features darkened. Cultural misunderstandings that lead to interstellar conflicts are safety issues, you culinary anarchist. But if you need more evidence... The little alien zipped away again, returning moments later with yet another reel. The alcohol incident. Watch this and then tell me human beverages are harmless. Sozia loaded the third reel with growing frustration. This documentary was shorter but no less dramatic. It told the story of the Xenathi, known throughout the galaxy as the most peaceful species ever discovered. They had no word for violence in their language, resolved all conflicts through interpretive dance, and had never recorded a single act of aggression in their civilized history. The Xenathi's unique brain chemistry, the narrator explained, had evolved without any natural fermentation processes on their world. They had no exposure to or tolerance for ethanol in any form. The documentary showed the fateful first contact celebration. Humans in a gesture friendship had shared champagne. The Xenathi, not wanting to offend, had consumed the beverage. What followed was 48 hours of footage compressed into a horrifying montage. After taking a liking to the beverage, the peaceful Xenathi gradually transformed into belligerent, aggressive creatures. They picked fights with furniture. They challenged their own reflections to dance battles that turned into wrestling matches. One Xenathi was recorded attempting to declare war on a potted plant. The entire diplomatic delegation had to be sedated for 3 days while the alcohol worked through their systems, the narrator concluded. The psychological trauma of experiencing aggression for the first time led to a planet-wide therapy program that continues to this day. The Xenathi now flee at the mere mention of human beverages. As the screen went dark, Sozia stood and faced the Tridarian. These are all extreme cases. Specific species with specific reactions. You can't punish the entire galaxy because some species can't handle certain foods. It wasn't me who made the law. I'm only here to provide information about it. The Tridarian's vehicle rose to Sozia's eye level. Do you know how many more incidents there are? The great pasta panic of the starch-fearing collective? The spice wars triggered by human hot sauce? The philosophical crisis caused when the hive mind collectrons tasted individualistic flavors in human cuisine, and experienced independent thought for the first time. But my customers, Sauzier began. Your customers? The Tridarian's voice rose to a squeak. Always about profit with you merchants, never about the greater good, the stability of... The alien paused, its purple features shifting through several expressions. Although... Sauzier leaned forward. Although? The Tridarian's vehicle lowered slightly, and its voice became conspiratorial. There is an exception. Article 94 of the ban, a special provision for certain circumstances. What kind of exception? Humans themselves are still permitted to consume their own cuisine, naturally, and there are 3 other species, Deathworlders all, who have proven biochemically capable of processing human food without incident. The Kraxans, the Ivit, and the Vorat. Sauzier's scales rippled with interest. Those 3 species made up a small but significant portion of his clientele. So I could still serve human food to them. If, the Tridarian emphasized, you obtain the proper permits, file the necessary paperwork, post 5 different warning signs in 100 languages, maintain separate cooking surfaces to prevent cross-contamination, and, the alien paused dramatically, sign a personal liability waiver. I'll sign anything, Sauzier said quickly. The Tridarian produced a document from seemingly nowhere. Actual paper, of course. This waiver acknowledges that you understand the risks of handling human food, that prolonged skin contact with certain human spices can cause scale discoloration in Phrygians, that inhaling vaporized capsaicin may cause temporary respiratory distress, that exposure to certain fermented human foods could lead to... I'll wear gloves, Sauzier interrupted, taking the document. I'll wear a full environmental suit if necessary. My restaurant's reputation depends on serving authentic cuisine from across the galaxy. If I can only serve human food to humans and 3 Deathworlder species, so be it. That's still better than nothing. As he signed the waiver with all 6 hands, the document required multiple signatures for some reason. Sauzier felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd lose perhaps 30% of his human cuisine customers, but he could work with that. He'd market it as exclusive, dangerous cuisine for the galaxy's toughest species. There was probably a profit angle there he hadn't considered. There, he said, handing back the completed waiver. Am I legal now? The Tridarian scrutinized the document with those large purple eyes, then nodded. You'll receive your permits within 10 to 12 standard business cycles. Remember, humans and registers Deathworlders only. 1 violation and your license will be revoked permanently. Sauzier left the Information Department of Interspecies Affairs with his head high and his spirits restored. Yes, he'd have to reorganize his menu. Yes, he'd need new warning signs and separate prep areas, but the Everything restaurant would survive. His brand wouldn't be tarnished, if anything. Being one of the few establishments licensed to serve dangerous Earth cuisine might actually boost his reputation. As he emerged into the modern corridor beyond those ancient doors, Sauzier couldn't help but chuckle. Some of the most advanced civilization of the galaxy, brought to their knees by coffee, cheese, and champagne. Perhaps humans were more dangerous than anyone had imagined. But then again, danger had always been good for business, and that was enough for him.